The Midnight Dance by CartoonNerd12, Chapter 10. When they had all gone back to the room to sleep for the rest of the night, Fluttershy found out she couldn't sleep like the rest of her sisters. No doubt they were able to sleep peacefully, knowing they had found love in their life. But she hadn't. Or rather, she hadn't been able to express it. Maybe once more suitors come, she would be able to call him and tell him then. Then a horrible thought occurred to her. What if he got caught? Would Mother put him back in that dark, cold stone prison? She would never see him again. That was it. She couldn't put it off any longer. She had to see him now. She quietly slipped out of her bed and fluttered over to the balcony window. She did a quick glance back, making sure her sisters wouldn't wake up. She unlocked it and heard a snort coming from Rainbow Dash. She slowly opened the window door, went out onto the balcony and closed the door behind her. The gardens were just below the balcony. She started flying into the trees and finding a safe area to meet with him. "Discord?" she started whispering. "Discord!" But when he hadn't come, Fluttershy knew she was forced to call out, maybe even louder if he was asleep. But this couldn't wait. She needed to talk to him. "Discord!" Her whispers started growing. "Discord!" She took a deep breath and finally shouted out, "Discord!" She covered her mouth and looked around to make sure no pony heard that, but luckily the creature she had called for came. He was wearing a nightshirt with a matching cap and had a slate mask over his eyes. He took it off, revealing his tired eyes. "Fluttershy! What in the world? Do you know what time it is?" He summoned an alarm clock to show her the time before he made it disappear. "I know, and I'm sorry, but I couldn't sleep." "Why not?" He took off his cap and nightshirt as he sat down next to her in concern. "Did you have a bad dream?" "No, I couldn't sleep at all." "How come?" "Well, She was almost in tears, and she wrapped herself around him tightly, not wanting to let go, and cried into his neck. Discord was surprised by this strange development and asked in a panic, "Fluttershy, sweetheart, did someone hurt you? Because if they did, they are going to pay dearly." He snarled. No, she said in between sobs. "Just hold on tight to me." "Well, all right, if you say so. Not sure what good it will do, though," he said as he rubbed her back, touching strands of her pink hair. "Plenty," she softly answered, as she felt herself calming down in his strong arms. They reminded her of another pair of strong arms that held on to her when she was little and vulnerable. She remembered a thunderstorm happening one night that was so intense she got scared and ran, but she was stopped by some pony. She looked up to see a gentle green pair of eyes looking at her. She heard the thunder again, but she knew she was safe, knowing she had her father there the whole time, protecting her from harm. King Sombra would always do that for ponies and family. But now that he was gone, she needed someone else who could keep her safe and loved. She knew then that Discord could do just that for her, and didn't want to risk losing him when she had already lost her father. "Discord?" "Yes, my dear Fluttershy?" He had her facing him. "I can't ask you to put your life on the line for us." "What?" "I was inconsiderate to forget what would happen if you got caught." "Oh," he scoffed. "Like anyone could catch me. You have nothing to worry about." He patted her head. "I'm serious." She moved away from him. "My parents caught you once, didn't they? It could happen again." "That was a fluke, I assure you," he mumbled. "How Celestia did it, I don't know." "It was selfish to think about myself, when I should have been thinking about you. I don't want to lose you." His eyes widened at her statement. "What?" "I can't lose you. Not now. Not ever." She nuzzled her head under his chin. He was agape of how this was happening. He finally has her. His one true love. He had her facing him once more. "Now you listen to me, Fluttershy.
I'd rather be stone again than lose you. Without you, I would be in stone still. But if something were to happen to you, I would gladly give up my life to be a statue, for I cannot live without you.
She wiped her tears and began to sing, and they joined together in a beautiful duet. He kissed her head, and in turn she kissed his cheek. Both sang. They went into a tight embrace as they passionately kissed. Once they broke away, he said,
"Oh, Fluttershy, you don't know how happy this makes me."
"Me too." Then she slightly frowned. "But what am I going to tell my sisters?"
"Well, you don't have to tell them anything. It'll be our secret, and ours alone."
"But they admitted to me about their own loves. I feel I should do the same, since we made a pact not to keep secrets from each other in a time like this."
"But you know they're just going to say I put a spell on you, making you think you fell in love with me."
"I know. I want to tell them, but at the same time they might force me away from you."
"They wouldn't dare! I'll show them a thing or two if they pull something like that."
She took a hold of his paw and held it to her face. "I don't want either one of you to get hurt."
"I don't know what else to say, Fluttershy. Either you tell them or don't tell them. It's as simple as that."
And yet, why does it feel like it isn't? She took a deep breath. "I'm going to do it." He raised his eyebrow at her in surprise.
"You are going to tell them?"
"Yes, and I won't care what they'll say. You and I were meant to be." A smile spread across his face when she said that, and he took her chin to kiss her sweet lips. She did a giggle before pressing her lips to his as they felt so wonderful.
"Who would ever have thought that a beast like me could love a beauty like you?"
"You are not a beast. I know stallions who act more of a beast than you do. They look handsome, but they are unfeeling to those who need kindness."
"Talking about your cousin Blueblood?"
"Quite. Luckily, I won't have to worry about him as a suitor anymore." Then she gave a yawn.
"Tired?"
"Very." Her eyes started drooping.
"Well, you did summon me at 3 o'clock in the morning," he chuckled, "but I'm glad you did. So let me help you get back to your room."
"How?"
"By teleporting you, of course."
"Then we best say our goodbyes until we see each other again." He nodded and took her hoof to kiss it, but instead she wrapped her hooves round his neck and fully kissed him. He was surprised, but gave in. She slowly moved away from him, smiling and saying, "Good night." He returned her smile and whispered,
"Good night."
He snapped his fingers and she was gone in a flash. She found herself back in her own bed of her and her sister's room. She felt content knowing she could finally sleep like the rest of her sisters. She closed her eyes and all thoughts went to her very special Some Draconicus. While her daughters slept, Celestia walked into a long-forgotten room of the castle that she had once shared with her husband. She kept it locked so that the servants wouldn't go in to clean it. She didn't want it clean, as she wanted to leave it as if it were keeping the memory of her love fresh. Using her magic, she unlocked the door and saw before her a room she loved so much with the love of her life. But after years of neglect, it was dusty and full of cobwebs. She went to a nightstand close to the bed, opened a hidden drawer, and magically took out a small jeweled box. She opened the lid of the box, and it played a lovely tune, while 2 golden figures that resembled her and King Sombra were moving in a circle. She hummed to the tune as the memories came back to her of when she had first met her beloved. Princess Celestia and Princess Luna were sitting side by side on their thrones of the castle they resided in. Luna suddenly gave out a yawn, asking,
"Really, sister? Must we both go to this royal summit? Surely you could go by yourself to represent the both of us."
Celestia just smiled and said, "Starswell thinks it's best we attend to show we both take equestrian matters seriously, and I believe it would be good for both of us to find allies within other members of royalty. We could help each other if something were to happen in any of the kingdoms." The dark blue alicorn sighed in defeat.
Yes, I suppose you are right. I shall find a common ally if it is necessary.
Thank you, Luna. And frankly, I don't think it would be much fun without you anyway.
Quite right, she cheered.
The sisters giggled as they descended from their thrones and moved out of the castle, where 2 golden chariots awaited to escort them to Canterlot. King Sombra sat on top of his throne as the visiting royalty came in to greet them, as was protocol for when a royal summit was to take place, and a royal was hosting the meeting. The other royals would be respectful of them and their kingdom. Princess Platinum of the Unicorns had finished giving her bows, and so did Princess Amor of the Crystal Empire. Then, once the Sultan of Saddle Arabia had done his greeting, the herald then announced the next visiting royalty.
Presenting their highnesses, Princesses Celestia and Luna.
Sombra smiled as he saw the regal sisters walking in with their flowing manes. He had heard legends of the 2 sisters as protectors of Equestria. Now he could see why. They were alicorns, the most powerful of Equestria's ponies, including him. He bet the young, dark-haired one was Princess Luna, while the tall, beautiful one was Princess Celestia. The cutie monks also helped him figure out who they were. Celestia and Luna bowed before him while he bowed in return. Celestia said, "Your Highness."
"Princesses,"
he said. "May I be the first to thank you for hosting this important summit."
"It was my pleasure and honour, my lady."
Celestia could feel her cheeks going pink when he called her that. He was indeed very handsome with those dazzling emerald-coloured eyes of his. He saw the spark in her sweet, light violet eyes. She was the most gorgeous creature he had ever seen. Then he cleared his throat, knowing that he had to be getting back to business at Hoof, and to not be distracted by such beauty.
"Well now, since we are all here, we should begin at once."
"Agreed," Princess Celestia replied. In mere moments, the delegates of nobility were sitting around a large conference table, while already delivering progress reports on how their kingdoms were doing. Celestia was especially interested in Sombra taking care of the capital. He did such a fine job taking care of his ponies and keeping everything in order. When it was time for her report, Sombra was amazed at how she and her sister could live in the ever-free forest with little or no danger, keeping the surrounding areas safe from harm, and raise and lower the sun and moon, which never gave them trouble. Once she had finished, Sombra then proclaimed,
"Well, it is great hearing that every one of Equestria's neighbouring kingdoms are peaceful and prosperous. So this summit is hereby within a joy—"
"Pardon me, my king," Celestia interrupted, "but there are some issues that need addressing before we go."
"Oh?"
He raised a brow and then smirked.
"Would you care to share with us what's missing?"
He was practically challenging her. She smirked back. "It would be my pleasure." She started compiling a list.
"Well, that's all well said and done, but have you considered—"
He kept on talking to her while the other royals looked back and forth between the banter. Celestia and Sombra were going on and on with each other, forgetting all about every other pony in the room. It wasn't until Luna flew up above them, raising her voice, echoing out, "Enough! Since you two cannot disagree on the meeting's ending, I recommend that we send an extra day to make sure everything is settled." The royals nodded, while slightly shaken by Luna's booming voice. Both Sombra and Celestia felt embarrassed at that point and quickly composed themselves, with Sombra saying,
"Very well. I will have my guards escort each of you to your rooms for the night."
He nodded to some guards nearby, and they started leading the way. Celestia and Luna were about to follow until Sombra stopped them with his hoof and said,
"If the princesses will allow it, I shall be more than happy to escort you myself to the room."
Celestia's eyes gleamed at the offer and calmly responded, "We are most gracious, your grace."
"Most gracious," Luna replied. "I can tell we are going to get along just fine," he smiled. "And let me apologize for my inconsideration of missing something in the meeting."
"It is I who should apologize. I had interrupted you at the last second, just when you were about to end it. That was poor conduct on my part."
"No kidding," Luna scoffed, only for her sister to hear. "But you had a right to," he insisted. "You are the guest, so it is my duty to serve you."
"But one should not take advantage of the host, especially if that host is a king." Luna rolled her eyes, thinking, they're doing it again. When he suggested,
shall we call it even? I think we are both at fault with our fellow royals are concerned, since we never gave them a chance to speak.
I agree. She smiled brightly at him. He returned her smile before turning to the other sister.
You know, I must thank you, Princess Luna.
Thank me?
How? You reminded us of what was really important right now. And actually, by staying an extra day, you'll get to be a part of the Grand Galloping Gala. That is, of course, if you would like to come. And that invitation is offered to you as well, Princess.
He faced the beautiful Celestia before him. Celestia asked her, well, Luna, shall we? It would be a wonderful way to end the Royal Summit. The Night Princess was deep in thought and finally said, why not?
It could be fun. Excellent! Once the others have gone, you shall be my guests of honor.
Thank you, Sombra, Celestia said and had to catch herself. I mean, Your Majesty.
Please, you can call me Sombra.
He took a hold of her hoof and she found herself feeling at ease. He turned to Luna.
That offer is to you as well, Princess Luna. I shall call you by your name, as long as you call me by my name, Luna, as my sister does.
She figured that would make him happy. It did, as he asked the White Alicorn.
So I take it you are Celestia to Luna?
I am, and you can use that too. He kept smiling until he stopped at the two-way doorway and opened them.
This shall be your room.
He revealed a large bedchamber with just 2 beds, and the floor was shining with a large white circle tile and little plain circles inside it.
I must take my leave, but I will see you both for dinner tonight.
We will. Thank you again, Celestia told him, giving off a loving stare. He returned the stare and quickly found a vase in the hallway full of roses. He magically took one and gave it to her. She was surprised but overjoyed at the same time.
Until then.
He kissed her hoof and slowly turned to go. She closed the door and faced the taunting sister. Why don't you two just get married already? Oh, I could even perform the ceremony. Luna, we've only known each other a day.
But you obviously got it bad, and from the way you two were acting, you two might as well be married.
Oh, Luna. But nevertheless, her sister was right. She had fallen in love with Sombra from the moment she first saw him. When dinner time came around, Celestia and Luna were seated next to Sombra. As she drank from her cup, she heard Luna and him talking about her, and when he complimented her, it caused her to spit her drink out on him. The other royals were close to them were agape, as was Luna. Celestia stood frozen in horror, and was about to apologize when he started laughing. She laughed along with him, leaving the others speechless. The next day they managed to finish the meeting much sooner than they had thought, probably because Sombra and Celestia wanted it over so they could finally speak to each other again. When the fellow royals said their farewells, Sombra wished to go and finish preparations for the gala that night. When Celestia and Luna retired to the guest room, Luna helped her sister look good for the unicorn king she was interested in. The night went better than Sombra could imagine. First he saw the mare of his dreams on top of the stairs, looking more beautiful than she had in the last couple of days, and he escorted her into the ballroom. Then, in the midst of the gala, while they were watching his subjects dancing, he bowed to her as a gesture to ask her to dance with him. She accepted, and they moved to the middle of the floor, took each other's hoof, and moved in a circle, dancing beautifully while keeping their eyes on each other. Much later, they were in the gardens over the roses. They touched horns, and in mere seconds they had their first kiss. When she had to raise the sun the next morning, it was hard for them to say goodbye, but they promised they would write to each other often. As the months had passed, they longed to see each other again. That day finally came when Starswell needed help keeping the changelings at bay, because they were trying to get into Equestria's borders. Luna thought it was best she stay behind in case the changelings were to overwhelm them. Since Sombra was their closest ally to help them, Celestia set off with him to keep the changelings out of Equestria. It was no surprise during that mission. They had a chance to bond more, and fell even more in love with each other. In fact, just the day before facing the Changeling Queen to win the battle, Sombra had told her that he loved her, and would do anything to keep her safe. Celestia admitted to him that she also loved him, and hoped that once they would win the battle against the Changelings, they would be together forever. After a long, hard battle against the Queen, they had triumphed. Sombra knew then that he had to ask the question while peace was still standing. Celestia had happily accepted his proposal, and within a few months they wedded, with Luna performing the ceremony. Then, on a joyful day, while Celestia was raising the dawn, they had their daughter. They called her Fluttershy, and as time went on, they had more daughters to love and cherish: Rarity, Applejack, Rainbow Dash, Pinkie Pie, and finally their last born, Twilight Sparkle. They were the happiest royal family that ponies had knew of. But that was all going to change one day. Celestia and Sombra went behind their castle home every other month with their fillies. That month they were staying over at the castle of the two sisters. The family was outside in the courtyard. Luna was playing with Rarity, Applejack and Rainbow. Soren was playing with Pinkie and Twilight, while Celestia was comforting Fluttershy. Twilight was being tackled by Sombra and giggled as she was thrown in the air by him. But from the view she saw a huge dark cloud coming and gasped. Sombra caught her as he saw the same thing and gave a scowl. A loud cackle filled the air as shadowy figures, which Celestia and Luna had recognised as nightmare forces, shrouded over the castle. Sombra shouted to the girls, "Go!" The girls screamed and ran to their aunt and mother as Sombra blasted a protective shield. But it was no use because the forces were still coming. He yelled back to them, "I'll hold them off while you run!" He ran back to the castle. "Sombra, no!" Celestia screamed and she turned to Luna. "Get the girls out of here! What about you?" "I'll be fine! Just get the girls to safety!" She flew into the castle. Sombra kept blasting away, but he was growing weak. He was cornered by the nightmares until a blast came from nowhere and the dark forces moved away from him. He looked up to see his beloved wife. "Are you all right?" She landed to his side. "I am now," he smirked. "You!" She gave him a playful smile as she touched his cheek, and then they touched horns. But their sweet moment was short-lived when they heard a cackle again, and turned to see the nightmare forces, revealing an old enemy. "Chrysalis!" Celestia cried. The Changeling Queen did a chuckle. "Oh, did you really think I would forget that you kept me from conquering Equestria?" "Hardly. Shortly after my defeat, I was on the verge of another plan to take the country, when the nightmares approached me, telling me we had a common enemy. Apparently, it seems that you stopped them long before they could corrupt your sister to the dark side." Celestia shot a blast of light, which Chrysalis countered. Her magic was now stronger because of the nightmares. Celestia's magic was moved back to her horn and overwhelmed her, and she fell to the ground. "Celestia!" Sombra rushed to her aid, holding on to her. "And now, Celestia," Chrysalis said, "by the powers given to me by the nightmare forces, I shall place a curse on you." Her horn glowed, performing the spell, and was ready to zap. "No!" Sombra jumped in front of his love and took the curse placed upon him. "Sombra!" His wife hollered out as she saw the transformation occurring to him. His horn started to get curved and turned to a red colour. His coat was black to his usual grey, and his mane a jet black and was flowing like fire. He even grew fangs, and when he opened his eyes, they were no longer the soft emerald she always knew, but red with a glowing green in place of his whites. "No!" she whispered in despair. "Ah!" Chrysalis screeched. "That curse was meant to be for you!" "Well, at least you get to suffer knowing that your husband is a monster." The word echoed through his head, and he turned to face Celestia. Seeing the terror in her eyes, he knew he had to go. With a release of purple smoke, he disappeared, and Celestia screamed out, "No! Sombra! Come back!" She started crying. "You may have won this round, Celestia, but rest assured we will be back. At least we have a consolation prize." "What do you mean?" the Alicorn Queen demanded. The Changeling Queen gave out another chuckle. "Since your husband got struck, I now have a signature on your daughters. They carry part of his blood. So, when they fall in love, I'll be able to track them down and can place the same curse on them as well as your husband. Now, isn't that swell?" She grinned evilly. Celestia bared her teeth and released a mighty sunray. It managed to hit a couple of nightmares, but not all of them, as the rest started to knock down the castle to make their escape. Chrysalis shouted, "We'll be back! And when we do, everything you have ever loved will be gone!" She cackled, and was gone with the forces right as the castle rumbled and crumbled. Celestia teleported herself to where her daughters and sister were. The girls were whimpering, and Luna wished she could console them, but she was worried also. Her sister and Sombra should have been here by now. Suddenly her sister came in a bright light, and immediately questions were raised. But she saw the pain in her sister's eyes, and Celestia finally said that Sombra was gone. Tears came pouring out from the little ones as they sobbed. Luna found she was also shedding tears. It wasn't until they got back to Canterlot and the girls were sleeping that Celestia told her the whole story. They knew then that the girls would be traumatized by this experience, and it would be wise if they altered the girls' memories, having them only remembering the good times of their father, and then they would forget all about Celestia and Luna's old castle, as it would only cause pain for them. Celestia looked around the room again, as she kept holding on to the music box, silently crying. She kept muttering, "I'm so sorry, Sombra. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry to you, my darlings. We wanted you to find love just as we did, but now it can never be. To force you into a loveless marriage has been the hardest thing I have had to do since I let your father go. But if that is the only way to protect you, then I am afraid so. Oh, I wish you were here." She looked at the golden figure of Sombra. Meanwhile, in the ruins of the sisters' castle, a figure with red and green glowing eyes took out a similar music box. He looked at the golden figure of Celestia. He said as he shed a single tear, "I miss you, my sweet Celestia."